Hi, and welcome everyone to this next presentation of Monarch from Altair. My name is Finn, and I'll be your organizer today. And with us, we also have the product manager, David Farnabo.
Hi Finn, yes, I'm here. Welcome everyone. I'm very much looking forward to this presentation.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining today. It's great to see people on the line. Thanks to AlphaSoft for inviting us along. We're going to be talking today about how to prepare your data in your organizations for analysis, for all the wonderful things we hear in the news every day or see in the movies around machine learning and AI. How do we start our journey towards that? What are the first steps we can take today to make us AI ready for the future? I think if we didn't appreciate the importance of data before, I think surely we do now. I think the last 2 years have shown us so many different applications and use cases for predictive analytics. It's gotten a lot of people excited about the potential of it. And this presentation is to show you how you can get started, how you can start doing the things in your organization that you've always wanted to do, and really divide it into bite-sized chunks. Over the last 2 years, we've seen analytics in just about everywhere. Governments have used it to predict the spread of the virus. We've used it in our own homes, Netflix and Spotify giving us recommendations. Pharmaceutical companies and giants have done massive predictions on chemical compounds to bring out vaccines at a much faster rate than ever before. I spoke to the chief technologist of Google a couple of weeks ago, and he said that they were doing these AI calculations in weeks, which would have taken up to a century on legacy infrastructure previously. So the savings and the potential here is incredible, and that's what we're going to be talking to you about today. How do we actually get there? In terms of the agenda, I'm going to kick off with sort of an introduction to Altair, to the data market in general, what we're seeing happening. Then Jakob Svensson is going to do a demonstration of our solutions, and hopefully we'll leave enough time at the end for audience question and answers. But as we said already, if you do have questions during the presentation, send them along, and please interrupt me. I think both myself and Jacob talk quite a bit, so you do have to forcefully interrupt us, I think, AlphaSoft team, but please do. As an introduction to ourselves, I'm a data strategist at Altair. I work with our clients and partners to get them up and running with our solutions. I also, on the side, have a podcast called Future Says, where we bring on leaders in the world of data science to tell us about the trials and tribulations on adopting a sort of digital first approach. So do check that out as well if you want a general introduction to data as well on an ongoing basis. We release an episode every 2 weeks. And then Jakob Svensson is far smarter than I am. He's our technical guru at Altair. He's based in Sweden, and he helps all of our clients from a technical perspective, getting up and running on the solutions, doing pilot projects, doing proof of concepts, and really solving a lot of their conceptual challenges. Jacob will be doing the demo and can introduce himself a bit more after my presentation. Jacob also came to Altair from the European Space Agency, so he's one of a lot of engineers at Altair. I would say we're a company, as you see on the next slide, of between 3,000 and 4,000 engineers. I think about 3,950 of us are engineers and about 50 of us are business people. I fall into that business category. So all technical questions will be going straight to Jacob. But a little bit about Altair, considering you know us already. We are about a $500 million company. We have about 4 offices in Sweden, where a lot of our work around the Nordics happens. But we're headquartered in Troy, Michigan. So we sort of set up during the automotive boom there. We started as a small consultancy firm. We grew into being a simulation firm. With that, we grew into being a simulation consultancy and HPC firm. And most recently, we've sort of joined the dots to become a data analytics simulation and HPC firm. So we're always diversifying. We're always trying to become better partners to our clients to solve more and more of their challenges. And we are now the only company in the world with that unique blend of software solutions. So in terms of where we work, and I think this sets the scene for this presentation. You can see we work in so many different industries and verticals with so many different types of clients. I won't go into all of them, but you can see that we do operate in a lot of different spaces. What I can tell you for sure is that every one of these spaces, every one of these clients, every one of these industries has a lot of data, data that is growing in volume, in velocity, and variety. And every single one of these clients wants to start to prepare their data for machine learning, for analytics, for artificial intelligence. And there are some challenges to get there, but with our solutions, they are starting to overcome some of these barriers. So on the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see the 4 V's of big data. And this is a concept you hear a lot in data conversations, that data is obviously increasing, but it's not just increasing in size. That's volume, it's increasing in velocity. It's coming to us at higher and higher frequencies. We're no longer just getting a bulk load of data once a day or once a week. We're getting it on a continuous, ongoing basis every second, every millisecond. There's a huge veracity and variety of data nowadays as well. It's coming from so many different sources, sources that are structured, sources that are semi-structured, sources that are unstructured, like videos and images. So with all of this data, we have a huge opportunity to make our analytics more accurate. The more information we have, the better our analytics are. But with all of this information comes particular challenges around retaining and restoring the quality of that information. And that's what some of the statistics on the left-hand side of the screen show. Forbes have said that 88% of spreadsheets contain errors. That's a statistic that was only released last year, and that shocks me. How many of us use spreadsheets every single day, and 88% of them contain errors? It's extortionately high. We've seen IBM saying that bad data, poor quality data, poorly prepared data is costing the US economy over $3 trillion every year. So bad data is making bad decisions for the US economy. Information Age, which is a big publication around data, they said that 84% of their organizations see their analytics projects fail due to data not being in the right format. And Gartner, which is another big analyst, they've said a similar thing, that only 1 in 5 AI projects are successful. So you can see, we know how successful AI can be. We've all seen the statistics, but we know how difficult it is. And generally, where projects are unsuccessful, in my experience, is that the data is not of a well-formatted, well-structured degree, and that is what's causing the analytics to be bad, because as the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. If you're putting in bad data, you're going to get bad analytics. So clearly we have an issue here, and how we can solve it is through the concept called data preparation, which is, of course, the focus of today's presentation. What is data preparation? It is these 5 bullet points. It is firstly accessing data, as we said earlier, the variety of data sources. That's one of the 4 V's of big data. That is increasing all the time. We have more data in more structures. We want to try access all of that data, data from the likes of PDF files, as you see at the top, HTML files, log files, SAP, different ERP systems. The elephant there is Hadoop, which is a big database. Any type of big database or cloud database we need to be accessing. Your general SQL servers as well, and your application layers like Salesforce, if you have it, like NetSuite, if you have it. This is where your data is stored, and this is where you need to access to be able to prepare that data for analysis. Once you access it, you want to be able to transform it. And these sort of transformation steps are listed on the left and right of this central arrow. So things like parsing data, oftentimes data is not in a perfectly structured rows and columns format, and we need to try to parse the data out of it. So take a PDF, for example. The data could be all along the page, if it's a purchase order or if it's a shipping invoice. It's not necessarily in rows and columns straight away. So parsing that is a transformation, bringing it from text to data, starting to then sort and filter this data, starting to pivot, aggregate, join, merge this data, create new columns, delete new columns, cleanse missing values or nulls in your data, merging this internal data with external data. There's a lot of transformation steps that you want to do. And this is often what companies skip, and they go straight from the data to the analytics, which is to the detriment of the actual insights and predictions they are getting. The third step is around governance. The fourth step is around automation. And the final step then is around analysis. So how do we do that is through the tool that we call Monarch. This is what Jacob is going to demonstrate in about 10 minutes. Monarch has been around for 30 years or so. It was set up in the mid-'80s, much like Altair. It was only acquired by Altair about 3 years ago. But it's actually the most used tool in the whole wide world when companies are dealing with structured data, i.e. rows and columns and database data, and semi-structured data, i.e. PDF files, text files, Excel files, JSON files, XML files, these types of things. The last time I checked, it was 471 of the Fortune 500 companies are using this tool in parts of the organization to do this data preparation, this data merging, this data munging, this data transformation. And Monarch does those 5 steps that you sort of saw a couple of slides ago: the access, the transformation, the governance, the automation, and the analysis. Starting from the access, we wish all of our data was in a database and a data lake. Oftentimes companies might tell you that it is, but I can guarantee that there's a lot of information outside of that central data storage system that they need to get into that to make their analytics better. One of our clients is a semiconductor manufacturing company called KLA. Before they started using our solutions, they said they were only using 1% of the data in their factories. Just 1% of the data they were using for analytics. Now with Monarch, they're using an awful lot more of that. And why is that important? It's because, as you see on the left, just a 10% increase in data accessibility will result in more than $65 million additional net income for a typical Fortune 1000 company. So increasing that data accessibility will increase your income. It's as simple as that. There's big return on investment in getting access to more data sources and building your analytics on more data. You see another quote from Wells Fargo on the right, who again, obviously one of the biggest banks in the world, were looking to do credit decisions, who should or should not get a loan or a line of credit. To do that, they take data from multiple different systems. And previously it was a very manual process to extract that information. Sometimes they just left different data sources alone. Maybe it was external, it was on the web, and they just knew they couldn't get it. So the decisions were not very fair and equitable, but now with Monarch, they're accessing as much data as they possibly can to make the best and most accurate and most fair decisions. After the accessing part, as we said, it's the transformation part. Now, this is actually where 80% of a data scientist's time is spent on. So there's a huge scarcity in the world for data scientists at the moment. In the UK, there's about 1 million open jobs, I believe, for data scientists. So there are so many people need data scientists, but when people get data scientists, what they spend their time on is data preparation, data transformation. That's not what they want to spend their time on. They want to spend their time on the analytics. And if they're not spending the time on the analytics, then they're going to have negative job satisfaction and potentially leave. So what we want to be doing is to be doing this transformation as easy and as quickly as possible, and doing it in an easy to use, code-free way, so that it doesn't necessarily have to be the data scientist to do this data transformation. It can be any analyst, any engineer, any domain expert you have in your company can start to prepare this data, as I said previously. Finding nulls, finding missing values, merging columns, joining columns, these types of steps, which are so important to make the analytics right. Again, on the right, you see MasterCard, a big client of Altair's. They used to try to find fraudulent transactions. They would print out multiple different Excel files every morning, and they would go through 2 different Excel files and try to find what one file had and what the other file did not have, to try to find the discrepancies and the outliers. They would do that manually, going through with a ruler and pen, which would take so long. Of course, now using Altair Monarch, they can do this negative join in about 3 seconds. They can automatically see what's in one system, what's in the other system, and they can start to do some of these transformation steps. The next thing, of course, is governance. I mean, you're hearing here a lot of steps in data preparation, a lot of things you're doing. You need to ensure that this is tracked. And that's, I think, one thing that stands Monarch out from Excel, let's say, as a tool, is because you can do a lot of changes pretty easily in Excel. You can change calculations, the formulas, the columns, the data, but it's not so easy to actually see those changes, where it took place, when it took place, by whom it took place. So there's no real governance lineage, there's no tracking of what went onto your data. And so if somebody asks you, where did that number came from, it's very difficult for you to be able to tell them. So governance is really important, especially in places like finance, when there's a lot of regulation and legislation around what you can and cannot store, what you can and cannot do. And you can even see here, Model Sporting Goods, which is a big retailer in the US, they're using it for the same thing. When the data does not make sense, it's very easy for them to track back and to find what happened to that data, where it happened, and who did those changes. The next step is automation. I'll try to wrap this up in just 2 minutes or so. But the next step is automation. As you see, McKinsey has said that 1/3 of tasks in 2/3 of current jobs could be automated. So everything that you've seen thus far, we don't want to be doing it every day. We want to try to automate it as much as possible. It's what Marbridge are doing to save thousands of hours of their workload. It's what the largest retailer in the world is doing in their HR, in their payroll analytics, automating a lot of the work that would have previously taken weeks at a time. It now takes literally minutes. And of course, the whole purpose of this presentation and the whole priority of data preparation is to get to the analysis, get to machine learning, because if you go straight there and your data is garbage, your analytics is going to be garbage. And that is, the most important thing. As you see here on the left side, devoting time to data prep is important. The better the data that goes into the model, the better the output. It's as simple as that. And data prep can provide the trust that the data is good and ready for machine learning. And there are a mountain of use cases we could talk about here around how important data prep is for the machine learning. But I think at this point, it's best to jump over to Jacob, who's going to demonstrate some of these concepts, and hopefully we'll even make it to show you briefly some of those machine learning models that you can build once your data is ready. So Jacob, I'm going to tell you to take over. I think maybe, does the AlphaSoft team have to change presenter mode?
I can do that, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sean. Super. So Jacob, are you ready to be presenter?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. All right.
And there you should be able to present. Perfect. We can see your screen now.
Yeah. So how do I change to the, let's see, the other screen? Is that possible?
There should have been an option when you started. Well, when you clicked.
Here it is. Here it is. I think. Yeah. There we are. So let's see. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Yeah. So as Sean was mentioning, we essentially provide different kind of software solutions for data analytics. The one that I'm going to be showing to you today is called Altair Monarch Data Prep Studio. And as the name implies, this is used for preparing data. So really, as Sean was mentioning, kind of 5 different bullet points when it comes to connecting, transforming, the different 5 steps of the data preparation that is being used using this Altair Monarch Data Prep Studio. So as a lot of different companies could tell you, they have their data in a lot of different kind of sources. And if you take a look at the screen here, you sort of have the home screen of the desktop application Altair Monarch Data Prep Studio. In the middle, you have this big red button saying Open Data. And as we click this one, we can actually go through the different kind of connections that Altair Monarch has sort of in the software. So you can see here we can connect to PDF or text reports. I'm going to be showing you a little bit more what that means in a second. We can connect to spreadsheets, whether that is Excel worksheet design or SAS transport, Google Sheets, it doesn't matter. We can connect to any sort of spreadsheets, databases, applications. This means Jira, Google Ads. We can connect to big data frameworks, web data, either scraping it directly from the web or HTML code or JSON. We can connect to that sort of data and extract only the most relevant sort of rows and columns from that data source. So you make sure that you're not just copy pasting a full sort of HTML script into your into an Excel format. It is actually extracting only the most relevant part of that data. So as I was mentioning, we can actually connect to a lot of different data sources. Virtually everyone. If there's no connection right now, I would say that our developers can fix it in a fairly short amount of time. But we have one of the biggest libraries of different connections on the market, I would say. So as to show you a little bit on how Monarch is usually used, I'm going to show you how to extract information from a PDF report. So I'm going to go into my sort of workspace area, and it's going to make sense in a second how this is going to be used. And I'm going to drag and drop a PDF report into my workspace area. And it's going to open up a sort of a preview of the PDF, and I'm going to show you how to extract this data. So what a lot of companies still have issue with is that they are getting PDF reports from their mainframes or from their Salesforce sort of reports or any sort of software that's given them reports, or even customers that are giving them reports. So the issue is that if you have a PDF that is sort of unstructured, you can't really use this data for any sort of analytics or putting it into a data warehouse or whatever format you want to put it into, because it's so unstructured when you are analyzing this PDF document. So if you take a look at the screen here, I have a preview of my PDF document. You can see that each section of this PDF document starts with employee information. By the way, this is a report being generated from a fictional company called Beantown Investments, and this contains the employee information from every sort of employee in Beantown Investments. So each part of the document starts with employee information. You can see down here we have employee information again, and you sort of fill up the space in between employee information with all the information relating to one employee. So you can see here that in the second section we actually have a new employee, a new gender, salary, grade, a bunch of different information. So this is quite a nice looking PDF, but you can imagine that if I want to sort of highlight this information and copy paste it into a structured table, it would be quite labor intensive of how to sort of copy paste all of these values. This document here contains the employee information for 3,000 different employees, and of course this would take quite some time to sort of extract if we didn't have a sort of an extraction algorithm that we are creating with Altair Monarch Data Prep Studio. So basically how you do this is that we can create traps to extract information. So very simplified, what you would do is that you would just find a line where you want to extract information from. Let's say I want to extract the salary for all employees. I can just create a detail, and I say that I want to extract the salary. Sorry, it's salary. So I just write that I want to extract salary, and then I highlight what kind of value I want to extract. And in a preview table down here, you can see that we're extracting all the salaries for all 3,000 employees at Beantown Investments. So it really is that simple. Either you just write salary, or you say, I want to have, you know, a numeric character followed by a character from the alphabet, or a certain character, then I want to extract the value. And you can make these traps as complicated as you want. And this might seem like a very complex way to do it. I would say once you get the hang of it, it's fairly simple. But if this seems too complex, you can actually just use the auto-define function, and it automatically extracts all the information using the sort of repeating pattern that Monarch is finding in your document. So if you take a look at the sort of preview table that we extracted using auto-define, we actually have all the information for every employee. All the headers are correct. So we have the office, employee number, address. It is really that simple. Auto-define is a very powerful tool for extracting information. This way you make sure that you get the structured table in just one click. Yeah, so that's a little bit on how to extract information from PDFs. So here it really is sort of in the connect part of the sort of five-step procedure of sort of preparing your data. So what we're going to do now is click accept, and we are going to get this this table into our workspace. So basically here we have the workspace, and we can take a look at our data and see a little bit, okay, what kind of data are we working with, and yeah, how should we sort of take a next step when it comes to preparing this data. So as you get to this stage, you basically have a couple of different options. So the first thing I'm going to show you is just doing preparation on this specific table. So for instance, it has all the functionality you would expect from a data preparation tool. You want to split the birth date into you know, days, months, years. You can just make a split delimiter. I'm going to use my sort of slash sign here, remove the original column. This way we get 3 new columns looking like this. So here we have the month, day, year. You might also take a look at the, let's see here, yeah, the salary. We don't want to have the dollar sign before, because that it makes it sort of a string character instead of a numeric character. So we can just go to the replace. We can just use find and replace, and I'll make sure that all the dollar signs, we replace them with nothing. So we click OK, and then we can change this to a numeric value. This way we can use this more for analytics in a later stage. There are a lot more things you can do when it comes to data preparation. You can clean it up, so removing trailing and leading spaces and consecutive spaces, making sure that you don't have a bunch of sort of blank areas in your columns. You can make, let's make it lowercase, all of it. So you can make it proper case, lowercase, uppercase, yeah, whatever you want to do. So now that we did a little bit of data preparation on our table, we can actually see that this is all being saved here on the right. So here it says change history. And this basically means that all the changes that we are making to a table are saved as steps in the change history. So we can we can change these back really easily, but we can also edit these sort of as we go. And the full data preparation being performed on your data is going to be saved in the change history. And you can export this list and import other change history lists to make sure that you're performing the exact same sort of data preparation on different tables in your organization. You can share these across with different colleagues to make sure that you're not sort of following a script, because the rate of human error might be quite high in a situation like that. So what you can do is really make sure that you completely govern the way that you are working with the data. So that's a little bit on how to sort of make sure that you are completely auditable. So also if someone wants to look at what kind of data preparation did you perform on this table, you can just look at the change history. You're going to get the full list. You make sure that no step is missed. You won't really get this sort of auditability and government of data in Excel or any other tool, I would say. So yeah, that's a little bit just on the sort of how to govern the change history and a little bit on how connecting to data. Yeah, as I was mentioning, the amount of different sort of data preparation operations you can perform here are it's a large number. So I can't show you all of it now, but you can really do whatever you want. You have even the formula columns. So if you want to do any sort of programming, if you want to go that far, you can do that as well. So we have simplified operations and we have very complex operations that you might perform as well. So now that I created sort of a extraction of a PDF, I have a little bit of a change history. I might want to say, all right, but I don't want to do all of these operations for every document I get. Say I get, employee information every month or every week or something like that. I don't want to do it for each document. And sort of the neat thing with Monarch is that once you've done it for one file, you actually don't have to redo it for any other file with a similar structure. So here I have a couple of copies of employee information, and you just have to imagine that these are files with a similar structure to the file that you are extracting information from, but with new information in it. So similar structure, but new information. Now it's going to be exact copies. It doesn't really matter for this demonstration. But if this was new data, we could just drag and drop. So here I have 3 files. You can drag up to, I think it's around 4,000 files. So you can drag and drop these onto your trap, release it, and now it's going to extract all the information from these documents. So you can see here the hierarchy that we have all the PDFs that are being sort of aggregated into one table that you can export and use for whatever you want. So it's going to take a little bit of time here to just extract all the information, but in the end we should be having around 13,000 rows of data here, extracting information from 4 different PDFs without the need to open up the different PDFs, without the need to do the data preparation all over again, because the same change history is being applied to all data within this table, and the table now contains the information from 4 PDFs. So that's a little bit on how to very simplified sort of automate your data preparation. At this point, we can already now automate the extraction of information. You wouldn't have to do sort of any repeatable work. You can really enable everyone in your organization to not have to repeat, extractions or analysis or anything like that. It's just being automatically done within Monarch. So a very simplified way of looking at automation. You can of course do even more complex stuff when it comes to automation, but that's just a sort of a brief introduction on how Monarch is being automated. So as Sean was mentioning, basically the 5 steps are access your data, transform your data, govern that sort of data preparation being performed on your data sources, automation, which I showed right now, and then also analyze. So for instance, I have all the employee numbers and all the offices with every office that the employees work at within this data. And what I could do now is that I go into my data sources here, and I have some Salesforce data as a CSV file as well. So I drag and drop this into my workspace, and here I have the Salesforce data. And the Salesforce data contains all the sort of sales being done by employees within Beantown Investments and the employee number related to that sale. So, as the first table contained all the employee information, the Salesforce data only contain the sales being performed by sales personnel within Beantown Investments. So what I would want to check now is how much sales revenue is being generated by every office within Beantown Investments. And the way I would do this is that I go to my, let me just talk about this really quickly first. Up on the left corner, you have a couple of different tabs, all relating to the different steps that you should be taking when doing a data preparation project. You should be previewing the data. So if the data is very large, you can actually just take a look, a preview. You get the the amount of rows, the unique values, a little bit of a histogram to see how is the distribution of data, how many null values do I have, just to get a sense of your data before you load it into Monarch, because yeah, there might be that your data is completely very bad quality, and then you might not want to work with it. Next step, you could start preparing your data, which is the step that I showed you, where I might split up columns, I might make formula columns or delete a couple of columns, whatever you want to do, you do the preparation. After that, you do transformations, which is a step that I'm going to do a little bit later in this case. And then where you have combine, analyze, and export. So export, we are going to do the final step. We can export into sort of any different format you would like. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to drag and drop my employee information into my join area. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to drag and drop the Salesforce data. So now you might think, okay, but your employee information contains a bunch of duplicates and stuff. But that is sort of where Monarch is kind of handy, because the join functionality is one of the most sophisticated join functionality I've seen in any data preparation tool on the market. So what you're going to do is that we are looking at our standard joins. You can do inner join, left outer join, right outer join, full outer join, so you can just join all the data no matter if they match or not. And we're going to do an inner join. And as we do this, we can see that the employee information contains 12,748 rows, and the Salesforce data only contains 3,548 rows. So what you want to do is that we are going to join on employee sort of ID number. I guess what we want to do is, yeah, I mean, it's going to contain a couple of duplicates, but I guess we could remove them in a later stage. So down here on the left, you get the sort of the result table row number. So this is how many rows the result table is going to have. You can also do lookup joins, and I think it would make more sense to do a right lookup join, but yeah, let's just do a standard for now for this demonstration. But you can also do negative joins, so you only join the ones that are not matching. This way you can really create a bunch of different tables and sort of analyze them separately from each other, just because you have all these options on how to do stuff like this. So we're going to do a standard join, we're going to do an inner join, we're going to click on OK, and now we have a new table looking like this. It's combining the data from these two. We have sort of a hierarchy here on the left. Next thing I might do is that I might look for duplicates and say use all columns as keys and remove duplicates. Yeah, something like this, and we can just click OK. And in this final table that we have here, we only have 3,548 rows. We can see it down here. And then finally, we might do a group, and we might summarize the license revenue made for each office. And you can choose whatever you want here. If you want to count some, count not empty, maximum, medium, whatever number you want to do. But we're going to do a summarization. Click on OK. And then finally, we're going to sort this as well to just see which office is selling the most sort of product in this case. You can see here that the Hartford office is selling more than the Springfield office. So we kind of have kind of a summary of the license revenue being generated by each office. And we did this by combining data and sort of doing a little bit of data preparation to get to this analysis. So the Hartford office is obviously generating more license revenue than the Springfield one. It might be good to know for the executives at Beantown Investments. Yeah, and finally, we are going to press on export. Here you can see a couple of the different formats you can export this data into. So of course, we have Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Access, CSV, and JSON. But you can also export directly into Microsoft Power BI. So this way you can kind of create this sort of data workflow where you are preparing your data and then directly uploading it into a Microsoft Power BI dashboard. And you can see kind of as you add new data, how your visualization is going to change in sort of just a kind of an automated fashion, I guess you could say. You can also upload it to Tableau, Qlik. Panopticon is the visualization of option from Altair, which also has a connection to Altair Monarch Data Prep Studio. And I mean, this is a very simple sort of data preparation workflow. If you would want to take this sort of to the next level, let me see if I can open this up here. You would of course want to automate this even further, because as you saw in Monarch Data Prep, Monarch Data Prep Studio, it still requires sort of a human to drag and drop these files into the workspace, manually exporting them into certain formats. There might be sort of a need for, you know, completing something that is completely automatic and also can sort of communicate to you with an email to sort of notify you on the processes being done in your sort of data preparation pipeline. And what we use for this is called Altair Monarch Server, and this is a sort of, it's also called Altair Monarch Automator. And the sort of principle is really simple. It's sort of a node-based workflow instead of sort of just a data preparation workspace, as you saw with Altair Monarch Data Prep Studio. And the idea is that either you have sort of a file input, a web input, or a database input. And as a database, you can use cloud or whatever you want. And you have sort of a file input, web input, or a database input. You connect this to a workspace, and the workspace, that is what we call sort of the full flow of data preparation you see here. So, you know, you can make this as complex as you want, but what you have to do when doing it automatically is that you make it generic enough to work with any of the files that you might incorporate in your data preparation workflow. And then you just save this workspace, you upload it into your Altair Monarch Automator workflow, and you connect it to sort of a data input, whether that is, you know, the web input, file input, database input, doesn't really matter. You can connect a lot of different data sources together. You connect it to a workspace, and here you will sort of set a sort of an output. You know, you grab all the input data sources, you create an output, and this can then be exported into whatever format you want. So here you could just write it directly into a OLEDB or ODBC, you know, an SQL database. It doesn't really matter. You can really write this to whatever format you want directly into databases or CSV or Microsoft Power BI again. So you really have that sort of automatic update. And once you created your workflow, you go into the sort of automation part of the software. And here you can say that I want the execution frequency. I want to do it hourly, daily, weekly, monthly. I want to do inputs monitoring. So I want to do it whenever I reach 100 files, 1,000 files. And yeah, you can also make sure that you're distributing the sort of information being acquired in this workflow. So you want to send out emails or logs, or you want to move files into certain folders. Yeah, so I mean, this is a very natural next step. As soon as you created sort of a working data preparation pipeline, what you want to do next is to make sure that you're automating this. You have full sort of control and monitor how your models are working with the data, that you're not running into a bunch of problems. And this is completely possible with Altair Monarch Automator. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the automation. I thought that I might show you a little bit more of the analytics as well, because that's what I think is really cool. So let's say that you have the data being sort of generated here, and we could take a look at the license revenue here being generated for each office. So this is a little bit of an analytics, but I would say this is a very simple form of analytics. So what I would want to do next is sort of create a machine learning algorithm to sort of help me out with the analytics of this data. So what you would use for this is called Knowledge Studio. Let me just pull it up. And the idea with Knowledge Studio is that it's machine learning, but you don't have to do any programming. So what you would do is that you have this sort of blank workflow canvas here, and you just drag and drop different nodes onto it, and it's going to help you out with analyzing your data. So what I would do for this, I would just create a file import. I will import the file that we were using before, the employee information, CSV. So this is the one that we created in Altair Monarch. Click on next. It automatically detects, all the columns, all the numbers, everything. You don't have to do any programming at this point. Yeah, we every time we click on a node like this, it opens up a wizard to sort of help us out on how do you want to import this, how do you want to analyze this data. Really simple. And so the gray nodes kind of represent sort of an action. I'm importing some data. The green sort of nodes, circle nodes, that is the data. So I can double click this, take a look at the data, get some insight of this. But let's say I just want to create a model. I want to analyze my data using machine learning. I can drag and drop a AutoML node, so automatic machine learning. Attach the data to the AutoML. I want to predict the salary. So let's see if we can find it. I want to predict the salary with the other variables as input variables. So we're going to see if we can find a sort of a connection between the salary and yeah, maybe some other inputs variables, just to see if they yeah, if there is any connection, so maybe if I want to apply for a job here, maybe I can use this data to see where would I get the highest salary, something like that. And for now, let's just do a neural net and a decision tree. I click OK, click run. And as you can see here, I'm not doing anything. This is being automatically done. It is doing some data preparation, some structuring of my data to create a machine learning algorithm. So it's optimized for machine learning. And finally, I can see here that we have a working model. This might look a little bit complex, but this is sort of standard way to analyze your data using this tool. And if we take a look at the decision tree, so yeah, let me just change the colors here a little bit. And let's say I'm applying for a job at Beantown Investments. The green color is going to represent a higher salary, and the white color is going to represent a lower salary. So as I can see here, here you have sort of the root node. The average salary is around $40,000 a year. We have a standard deviation of 27,000. We have a total of 1,900 records that we are using for this analysis. You can see that the department is very important for how much money I'm going to make if I start working at Beantown Investments. An executive has an average of $104,000 a year, whereas shipping and receiving only has 11,000. So it's a quite high difference within the company what the different people are making. And you can see also that underneath each one of these nodes here in the middle, age is the most defining factor. So you also see that if you're working in marketing and your age is between 35 and 62, you have in average $14,000 more in pay every year than someone between 26 and 34. So if I want to apply for a job here, it might help if I'm older as well, but that might be expected, but yeah, it might be good to know. And so what a decision tree does is that it structures all your data in the most important on top and sort of builds a tree further down where you can take a look at how each variable impacts your overall salary. And I can automatically grow this full tree. So here we have the full tree. And sort of I want to be looking at the more intense green colors here, because those are higher salaries, and whereas the white nodes are lower salaries. So the wider, the worse is kind of what I'm seeing here. So yeah, here for instance, it's also kind of interesting comparing it to the other analysis we did. If I'm working in Boston, Portsmouth, Providence, Springfield, or Worcester, I'm actually making more money than Concord or Hartford. So it's kind of interesting to know which office is making the most money as well. So I might want to go for these offices instead. And yeah, that was everything from my side. So yeah, I'm guess if we had any questions, we could be taking them at this point.
Excellent. Thank you, Jacob and Sean. Great presentations, I would say. We did receive a few questions. The first one, you described it already very good, Jacob, but what's the difference between the regular standard Monarch and the Monarch server license? Would you like to, in a few words, just describe it again?
Yeah, Sean, do you want to take this? I think you're actually more qualified to.
Sure. So the Monarch license is what you saw initially. It's the desktop application, and the server application then is more of the production environment. So we often like to think of Monarch, what Jacob is showing now, is sort of the development toolkit. So you develop the recipes, you develop the workspaces, and then the Monarch server, as Jacob is about to show, is where you push those recipes onto the server, and so it runs automated in production, in operationalization in real time. So that's sort of the difference in the tools. The tools are also licensed slightly different. One you can license on a named user basis, or you can license the sort of server as more of a processes basis. How many automated processes do you have? I think the licensing conversation can maybe be taken ad hoc offline, but the difference in the technical tools is as I said there. One is the development environment, and then one is sort of the production environment.
Yeah, perfect. Stian has another question, which goes, are there any trainings that introduce how to get started and to take advantage of all the features within Altair Monarch?
Yeah, great question. So this is something that I should have mentioned, but when you get to the start screen of Altair Monarch, so either if you get a trial version or if you acquire the software, to the right, you actually have all the links that you might need for getting started. That means, getting started, it even has a big sort of, this thing here. And you have video tutorials, documentation, more information about data analytics, support links. And you also, when you go to the support links, I think you also see the Altair community where you can get help from people who've been using this tool for years and years. So really, there's a lot of information just from opening up the tool, and there's even more courses and trainings that we can provide you if you feel like you want to have more of a handheld approach to this tool.
Excellent. So I think we have time for one last question. It's from Muha. Is Monarch the only tool within data analytics area, or are there other tools offered by Altair? Wow, that's a big question, guy, right?
Yeah, so actually Altair offer, I think it's about 200 software solutions. But within data analytics, Monarch is sort of our data preparation environment. Not Studio, as Jacob showed at the end, is our data science environment and machine learning environment. And then we have a purely data visualization environment called Panopticon as well. In the medium term, we'll likely be moving towards more of a holistic environment. We've developed a new tool called SmartWorks Analytics, which combines everything you saw today in the one interface. So Monarch, Not Studio, automation, and visualization, all within the one environment. So a lot of flexibility and a lot of tools. So depending on the use case and other criteria, we would decide ourselves with clients and partners what tool makes the most sense for a chosen area.
Great. And you can, of course, read about all alternatives at altair.com. With that said, I would once again thank you, Jacob and Sean, for the great presentation.